Fashion, not just women's fashion, is cyclical. Every trend comes back. Well, not everything, but you know what I mean. Usually it happens in 20-year cycles. The 2000s was all about the 80s, and the 2010s was all about the 90s resurgence. One quick example from women's fashion would be mom's high-rise jeans from the 90s, which have been raging all throughout the 2010s as a staple for casual styles. And if we talk about 2020's current trends, there is a clear distinction of 2000s looks re-emerging. So let's go down the list and start with the first Y2K trend that is making a huge comeback for women's fashion and streetwear. Baggy clothing. Much of the 2010s was filled with minimalism and skinny jeans, which was a direct result of consumers' disgust for how rampant baggy clothing was in the 90s and early 2000s. But after much time has passed and people feel the need to reinvent themselves, they often go back to the looks that they grew up on in their teenage years. So no matter where you look on social media, you're seeing more straight-leg denim or baggy looks that are replicated aesthetics from these time periods. Exposed thongs, otherwise known as the whale tail. Not only did every girl in their early teens rock this look, but celebrities all over MTV, VH1, and anywhere else you looked would promote the style. This Y2K time period was about showing more skin and being free from the norms of what was considered fashion. And this look of pulling up your whale tail while your parents weren't looking was a repercussion of that. And in comparison, we're seeing the tail displayed on countless fashion accounts and even celebrities in modern times. Monograms. Honestly, this one is arguable, but I'll give you my take on it. The 2000s was filled with celebrities with new money showing off their lavish lifestyles, and what better way to do that than to plaster logos on everything. And for those who are unaware, a monogram is a motif made by overlapping of combining two or more letters or other graphics to form one symbol. Plenty of brands do this. These all-over print looks can be traced all the way back to Dapper Dan from the 1980s and most certainly making its second wave in the 2000s. This style of in-your-face branding eventually became a status symbol but quickly crashed and burned. Honestly, it was its own kryptonite, and what was once tasteful and resembled wealth soon became tacky and try-hard after the 2008 recession. This same idea of logo mania hypebeast from 2016 to present-day 2020 is a recycled look from being popularized again with men and especially women's fashion today. Designer brands like Louis Vuitton, Dior, and Chanel are no stranger to putting these prints back on the shelves throughout the decades. Rhinestones. If you get me started talking about rhinestones, I'm going to start talking about bape. But since this video is not about rhinestones' popularity for men, I'll save that talk for another time. But for those who are unaware, the shiny and bedazzled looks were rampant for teenagers in the early 2000s. This trend hit almost every corner of fashion and had young millennials rushing to their nearest Target to glue rhinestones on whatever they got their hands on. Eventually, brands even went as far to make anything bedazzled. From hats to chokers to belts, sunglasses, shoes, purses, you name it. The popularity rose so high that it even had brands like BB literally using rhinestones as a staple for their logo. Eventually, this look became synonymous to the branding, and it's just hard not to think of rhinestones when I think of BB. And if we fast forward to what's happening now, I'm personally seeing more stones on jeans, t-shirts, sunglasses, hats, and much more. Evisu and bape. Okay, I lied about saving you about the talk. And for those who are watching, just hear me out. Evisu started in 1991, created by Yamane, and bape, created by designer Nigo, starting in 1993, were both monumental brands of the early 2000s with particularly the male audience. These brands helped bridge the gap of early teenagers buying into street fashion and later understanding the quality of collectible luxury goods. And although I understand these designers had always targeted towards the male audience, over the years, streetwear has changed a great deal. With the boom of street fashion becoming commercial in the past 5 years, we now have a large female consumer base that is getting educated on what men were buying from the beginning. And instead of fashion and streetwear becoming more futuristic, people have came to an understanding of appreciating and curating the original brands that birthed the culture. So, you guessed it, there's more girls than ever wearing bape hoodies, t-shirts, sneakers, and other accessories. And speaking from experience, for the past 15 years I've been buying into evisu. This is the first time I'm seeing a huge influx of girls wearing the evisu multi-pockets. And before I go off onto a rant, I gotta say, I would have never thought these brands would make their heyday again, especially in the women's department. But here we are in 2020, seeing more than half of the looks of the 2000s being dug up from the past. Steve Madden. Well, not this Steve Madden, but this Steve Madden. And I know that this is not particularly a look or a trend, and this is a brand, but let me explain. Anyone who grew up as a teen in this era will most definitely remember Steve Madden's advertisements that were plastered on kiosks inside middle-class malls across America. The ads were unavoidable and eventually adopted a guerrilla-type marketing model that became so frequent it was almost second nature to remember Steve Madden's positioning in fashion. Because before the brands like H&M, Zara, Uniqlo, Forever 21, we had Steve Madden leading the charts by selling women's shoes as a fast fashion business model. Girls were able to buy the latest trends at a fraction of the cost compared to its luxury counterparts. But besides being a pioneer of the time of fast fashioning women's shoes, Steve's most notable work has to be his unforgettable big-headed ads. Yes, I said big head ads, because that's exactly what they were. The advertisements would feature a girl who was wearing Steve Madden shoes, but was shown with unrealistic body proportions and extremely large heads. At the time that these ads were being pushed, it had a lot of mixed emotions. Some people loved it, some people hated it, but the fact was that Steve was ahead of the curve in grabbing people's attention. The advertisements themselves didn't last throughout the decades and ended in 2005. But just like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, fashion is cyclical. And where we can see some similarities would be in Demna's work with Balenciaga. Weird face proportions with exaggerated tailoring, grabbing Generation Z's attention through this overcrowded space of social media. And from an outside looking in perspective, much of the looks of these big-headed photoshopped models are not far off from the type of styles that we're seeing in 2020. Microchains. If anyone has been paying attention, microchains have been gaining an extreme amount of popularity for the past couple years. From the Chanel lock chains, Buddha necklaces, and Chanel logo emblems, most notable has to be the script microchains that were made popular throughout the 90s and 2000s. The trend clearly came from black culture and later transcended to the mainstream and even made it all the way till Sex and the City. And flash forward to 2020, you can find these items all over the internet in your local malls, and it's a great accessory to go with any outfit. Plaid. I know what you're saying, plaid is timeless, and I don't disagree with you. But as a reminder, the top music genre of the time was punk music, and one of the most popular prints they chose to use was plaid. They styled it in more ways than you can think of, and consumers bought right into it. And just remember that punk music and mainstream alternative rock was topping the charts over any genre of the time. And just like anything that goes mainstream, eventually gains followers who want to dress just like they do. But another design or brand that helped further this idea of plaid would have to be Burberry. Burberry gained its mainstream popularity with the rich and more specifically the middle class during the early 2000s. And while Burberry might not be as popular as it once was, its iconic plaid print has more than enough potential to come back in 2020. And for those who are watching this thinking to themselves, everything is going to come back, I kind of beg to differ. Every era has styles and trends that many people do not want to come back. Let me give you guys and girls an example. Women's dresses or skirts over jeans. Yeah, this was an actual look, and it even hit the red carpet, I believe. Trust me, a lot of people do not want this to come back. Oh, and if we talk about guys, tall tees for guys, please leave that in the past. I personally don't want to be around for it to become popular again. And since this video is all about trends, what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to go on some crazy tangent about how you should wear whatever you want to wear and do whatever you want to do, because you've heard that a million times from all fashion content creators. So if I were to give my thoughts on trends, honestly, I love them and I embrace them because I think they're a great starting point to get you where you need to go in finding what you really love to buy. So by closing this out, I hope you enjoyed this video, and maybe in the future we can chat about more trends that are making their comeback for the new decade. For more information, follow me on Instagram, that's @KeezyTV_. And for more in-depth breakdown content like this, become a part of our community on Patreon. The link will be in the description. Other than that, thank you so much for tuning in. It's your boy Keezy, and I'm out. Peace.